Hey Stefan, how's it going, buddy? Oh, hello.
Hi,
Hi, how's it going, right?
going well. Been a busy day.
You've had a busy day today.
No, I just got off a Zoom call with some really amazing people. So I'm feeling very positive and very glad. It was a group called Creators of Peace, and we were together last month in India. It was a new area for me, but it was so nice to see kind of familiar faces and to reconnect with people. It's nice to see faces.
Amazing, amazing. Right. Thank you so much for making the time despite your busy schedules. I know you've been running around doing so many things that we will get into in this talk as well. But for the people who don't know, Bri is an MC, she's a consultant, she modeled as well, but she has been a part of so many panels talking about different topics when it comes to getting women into power positions, breaking that glass ceiling effect, all of those things. But now she's working really hard on making sure that rations are sent out to people who need it the most. Rai, you've been extremely busy and you've had a team that's working day in and day out to do these things as well. For the people who don't necessarily know you or would like to get to know you, who are you today? What exactly do you do?
So who I am has always been a little different because it's constantly evolving. Who I am has been evolving. I have a background in media. I worked for 10 years in television, and I've studied. I did my first degree was in design. I'm now doing a master's in women and gender studies, and it's been constantly kind of moving. But I've spent a lot of time working in the social, both as a social activist, I guess I've been defining myself as a social political activist in the recent past. And a lot of the work that I've done is based on whatever's happening in the country at present. So the need for this, of course, was at the moment I'm collecting. It's not just me; we're a collective effort. Collecting rations. Actually, it's collecting money, funding for daily wage workers and low-income families. And we're focused in Colombo because we can't manage to reach out to everyone else. But we have a system of distribution, and we're working in Colombo, predominantly in Colombo. It started off with just a couple of packs. It started off with a Facebook post that then grew into 10 packs that grew into 150 packs. And then several of us who were kind of working in the same space decided to collaborate. And now it's 5,000 packs. And that's what we're working towards. So it's a lot has changed in the last 3 weeks. I can't take credit for this because there's a huge group of people who work together from different kind of sectors also. And we're coming together to do something that's a little bigger than what we normally would manage to do.
Absolutely. And it's incredible work. You're feeding so many people who don't necessarily have access to that, all those rations. So thank you so much for doing what you do. Like, uh, the thing what I realize is even 100 rupees in donations can go a long way when accumulated. And it can make a big difference in someone's life. So we'll get to where we can donate and all of those things during our chat as well. But I'd like to get to know you better, Brian. Like you said, you've been in multiple things. You've been in media, but you've done consulting. You did modeling as well. How did you get into
Yeah,
different? How
I
did you
kind
put
of closed
your
my taste in people. That was when I was younger. It paid a few bills. And when I say modeling, people automatically assume that it meant that I was a ramp model. I never was. I worked in television. I was a television model. I've done like very strange commercials endorsing very strange products for a very long time. I've been doing it for about 20 years. I stopped in the recent past, but I mean, it's how I paid through my education. So I have no shame in being able to say it. I was very, it was a wonderful thing to have done. It doesn't work for me anymore, but it was a wonderful thing to have done.
amazing? And how did you get into different all of these different aspects? Did you know from a young age that you wanted to be a social activist in a sense? And is this the path that you paved to get there, or how did it happen?
No, I think I've always been quite vocal and people centric. And I think everything else kind of just evolved with all my learnings, with everything that I've kind of learned. Uh, with our experiences, right? Each of our experiences shape us, and I think each of those experiences also helped me be a little more, I'd like to say, empathetic towards different groups of people and different kinds of living. And I think that's kind of, I look at things from a bit of a humanist approach, and I think that's where it's led me. So it's been a very long progression. I'm 35 now, and it's always been evolving. It's constantly evolving.
Amazing. I mean, 35, like you you've accomplished so much. And like I'm turning 27 this year and I'm like dreading it at this point, but I would love to like achieve so much in life. For the people who are watching now and are really confused as to how to help out, especially when it comes to projects where we help out daily wage workers or homelessness or even kids who are on the street, how do they get to positions where you can be more involved with projects such as what you're working on as well?
So have you already interviewed, you know Sharanya, who you may have already
Yeah.
interviewed. Something she said on a panel that we were on recently was it's also about understanding that we don't need to be necessarily reactive. We need to be proactive. So a lot of the work that we should do is something that should have happened already, right? So that's something we have to acknowledge before we get into this conversation. And I have to credit her for kind of talking about that, because that's really important. There are people like there are various organizations in Colombo and out of Colombo who do a lot of really, really good work. And that kind of work should be sustained and should be supported right throughout the year. We don't have to wait for a crisis for that to happen. So that was Sharanya's thought that I wanted to also reiterate and share here, because that's really important. In terms of how else to help at this point in time, there's very little that can, I mean, if we're talking about daily wage earners in particular, firstly, I mean, because I think you and I are talking, and it's mostly a Colombo audience watching us, reach out to the people that you know first, right? So there are people who are daily wage earners who might be in your neighborhoods, maybe the trishaws you travel in, maybe they're, friends, families that you know. The reason that I actually kind of moved into this space was because I knew a lot of daily wage earners, and that's what prompted me. So in the same way, first reach out to them if they've got online banks, because right now having like food packs sent across or going and dropping off rations, stuff like that is near impossible. So what can you do? Can you connect with them? Can you ask them how they are? Can you ask them if they've got a little bit of money? Can you check with your friends, pool in, and maybe ask them if they know someone who has because a lot of daily wage earners may not all have access to bank accounts or bank accounts with an ATM card, right? They have the book, the passbook, so they can't get to a bank. So you have to kind of ask them all these questions, and then I think a lot of people will also say, we'll also have questions. They're very confused. Who do we ask? So also supporting them with the right information, telling them to call their Grama Sevaka, telling them to call the police station, telling them to call the divisional secretariat or their local government representative, kind of giving them ideas so that they can go back and work on it. The other thing you can do is, of course, to contribute to a effort that's already happening, right? So we are, our collaborative, our kind of collective effort is we build Colombo together, Sarvodaya, and a few of us who come together. So we're one outfit. I know Moses Akash, Sri Lanka Unites. These are all different groups who are doing good work and who have found a way to navigate through these very, very rigid rules that exist now in terms of curfew passes, in terms of distribution of goods. So to find a way to connect. And there are only very few organizations that are managing to do that now, civil society organizations, because it's predominantly done by the government sector and by the military. But that being said, they are under-resourced. They aren't able to manage in the capacity that needs to get out right now. And sometimes maybe donations went to them last week, but by this week, those donations are over. So we're dealing with a problem that's not going to go away today or next week or even next month. So those are the different ways in which you can help connect with legitimate people, but also find ways that you can resolve it on your own without necessarily asking and overloading an organization or a collective that's already kind of really struggling to manage. So find ways to do that. And I know the government has also made a plea that you can also contribute and donate to their fund. And there are different ways, but I think the biggest way in which you can really help is by understanding the role that you play as an individual in that larger space. So when you buy what you buy, or when you eat what you eat, sorry, low battery, I just got it.
There you go. No worries.
Let's hope we last this conversation. But yeah, just finding a way to be empathetic towards other people's needs at this point in time. That is the way you can really help, without always being critical and not understanding how it works out, how it works in the bigger picture.
Amazing. And I just want to pick on something that you said, or something Sharanya said, like we tend to be a more reactive culture than a proactive culture. This is something that I talk about like all the time as well. Like we just wait for something to happen to like get full gear and then go and help and like do measures and stuff like that. But most of the problems that are going on around the world, whether it's homelessness, climate change, domestic abuse, all of these things are like very reactive things. And the steps that you can take to be proactive can be education and building up organizations to help people in need, like even when they're not in a crisis. So when it comes to the systemic challenges that we're having, like with the rigid rules and all of those things that we have to go through, what are some of the trickiest things that you have personally come across to when it comes to this reactive versus proactive?
So I've always been in the reactive stage as opposed to the proactive stage myself. So I also have to reflect on that, right? A lot of the things that I've been a part of have been in the reactive space, which is why I'm now in a more in this political space also that allows us to be proactive. Because if we are in some spaces, we're only always going to be reactive. So I have to acknowledge that before I start. I think it's a negotiation, right? We're always having to learn and unlearn. But I guess I don't have like a proper structured answer to your question. I think it's a lot of learning, and that sometimes takes a little while, and it can be very challenging. I mean, even with what we're doing right now, day by day we have new challenges. Day by day we're dealing with newer concerns and trying to figure out how to I mean, we're not an organization that has been running for many years. We're a group of people, we're a collective that have come together in order to deal with this current problem, right? So then obviously it's not going to be perfect. Obviously these aren't people who work together for years and know what it's like and have planned and have stocks and resources. So it's not ideal, and that's why we keep talking about being more conscious of the proactive than the reactive.
Amazing. And I'm glad that you acknowledge that, because I think you have so much self-awareness saying that, okay, I've always been reactive, but here's what I'm going to do to be proactive. But also I want to dig deep into, there are moments that in life where you feel super down or super demotivated. You see so many bad things happening around Sri Lanka in particular, and you feel like you're not doing enough in certain points in your time in life, right? So in those moments, what do you do to self-motivate? What do you do to like get yourself back on track and push to make a difference?
I think for me, my role has always been to get out there and do something, which isn't always the smartest solution, right? Because if everyone behaved the way I did and be like, oh, we're going to go to the streets, we're going to do this, I don't think that'll be the solution. But I think it's understanding what each of us can do in our own capacities, and that can be very different. I think post-Easter attacks, we saw some of the most interesting ways in which people dealt with a problem and how they could find a solution to it in their own way. So some reached out to their friends. Some kind of, I mean, in our neighborhoods, it was all about food. We exchanged food because we couldn't go.
There you go.
So something that we managed to do was to share food within our neighborhoods and kind of create. So, I mean, it's a very small exercise, right? It's not a massive thing. And there was no social distancing at the time, except for the barriers people created in their heads. So it was much easier in that sense to share food and to kind of share that that friendship and that relationship. I know someone, and I think a lot of people know of her also, who started drawing pictures of each of the victims as a way in which to remember them, which I thought was such a profound way as an exactly, as an individual to try to do something, right? Each of us tried different things. We had an interfaith blessing because I live very close to where the last explosion happened in the Hivala. So we had an interfaith blessing for all our neighbors because it was a very unsettling time for us. We are less than 50 meters away from where the last explosion happened. So everyone can find a way to connect and to do something positive. It doesn't have to be big, but I think knowing that you can be a positive influence, be it online, be it with one friend who really needs that support, and I think that's really powerful in being able to know that you can do that and you have the capacity to be that person, and you don't have to wait. You don't have to, I mean, we will have deep, dark, horrible moments that we don't think that we are significant. But for the better part, I think we have to acknowledge that we've got this amazing amount of power, and the more you acknowledge that, the better able you are to help other people.
Absolutely. I think you literally speak my language. Like doing something in your capacity, anyone can do. Like for
Look
Easter
at what
Sunday, I
you're
was
doing.
in Melbourne. Sorry?
Sharon, look at what you're doing. What you're doing right now is exactly that, right? I mean, you're not leaving your home, or you're not breaking any rules or regulations. But you're using your platform to talk to people and connect people, and this is exactly, you're holding the space for people like me, and for how many people a day, 6 people a day, 7 people a day, to come in and share their
Uh,
stories, right?
yeah,
And for
yeah,
16 days,
absolutely.
16 days. So this is what I mean. People using their spaces, their platforms, their voices, their faces to talk about something that's bigger than them. It's very, very powerful.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about the Easter Sunday, what happened, and how we're going to react to it or like tackle it now, because obviously it's on the 21st. So I personally organized a silent rally back in Melbourne. It was a whole day rally. About 200 people came, and one of the biggest things that I remember, I remember the whole day like it was yesterday. But one person came up and was like, she whispered in my ear, and she was like, "I'm from New Zealand, and I came here on a trip when this happened." And she basically said, "I lost my uncle and aunt to the bombings in Sri Lanka, and you have no idea how much this is helping me cope with the situation." And that for me just like completely made me realize that I like all of us can do something to make a difference. And since it's been 1 year since what happened, how do we cope with like in Sri Lanka especially? How do we cope? How do we remember those who are lost, but also help out those who are affected during this whole crisis right now?
So that's a really good question, and one that I had an answer to a month ago. I don't have an answer to today. Because we have formed here in the Hivela, there's the Hivela Residents Association, and we were actually going to bring together people to hold the space for them and have a conversation on what it means to be Sri Lankan, talking about identity, talking about, because there is a racist narrative that's happening at the moment, and we need to acknowledge that even with COVID. And we were trying to find some peace. Last year we had, in 10 days after we had that blessing that I spoke about, and we were trying to recreate something similar where we can bring people together. We maybe in a kind of we weren't sure exactly what format, but we were planning that. And then this happened, and now it's really difficult, right? Because here we have no social interaction, we have no physical interaction. That's what really allowed us to create those, right after the attacks, even in our neighborhood, with everything that had gone wrong, and the military and the CID and the task force also being around this residential area. The one thing that we felt at peace was that we could walk into each other's houses, sit with each other, cry with each other. I mean, it was very, very powerful. But now what do you do? How do you hold that space? And how do you hold that space with people who don't necessarily have the same means as you? Yes, we're in the same residential neighborhood, but it doesn't mean that everybody has access to Zoom or Skype or
Yeah.
WhatsApp so we don't all have that. And we are from very different kinds of families, ethnicities, we have very different socio-cultural backgrounds. So how then do you connect all those people who you could have brought to that one physical space, which we did? Now that's the challenge. So if I'm connecting with people online, then we're connecting with similar kinds of people who have maybe a range of the same kind of experiences, but I can't ask Nihal uncle who makes dodang juice and the acharu aunties to come. I can't ask them to join me on a Zoom call. So it makes things very challenging. And like I said, so a month ago I had an answer, and today I don't have an answer because COVID's thrown another curveball at us, and we have to find ways to connect. So how do we deal with this? I think we have to be conscious of the racist narrative, we can't ignore it. We can't pretend like it doesn't exist and be like, yeah, so that's not really relevant or it's not important. It's there. And I think, again, using our platforms right now is as much as we can do to talk about what we think is right, to talk about how the media in particular has to be conscious about how they frame things, because that's where people are hearing information. It's no longer at the Handiya Kade or the, that's not where they're getting the information from. It's the news. So being really conscious about that and being vocal about it. And for me, COVID's complicated an already complicated situation. So I don't have answers, but I feel like we can't ignore it.
No, that's totally fair. That's totally fair, because that's what I wanted to get your input on as well, because there's so many families who don't have access to the technology. They can't come in person anymore. It's just, that's why I wanted to get your insight. But also, I just wanted to also bring up that question, because if you guys do come up with anything and like something that can help in some sort of way by using media, using technology, and if I can use my platform to pitch it in any way, please let me know. I will share it around, because Easter Sunday was like a very traumatic time for a lot of us. I know friends who have lost people in their lives as well. So I think even though COVID-19 is happening and there's so many thousands of deaths going around, every life is valid. And I think the lives that I know the lives that were lost during the Easter Sunday attacks are also very valid. And the people have been, one of the things I spoke about, I actually brought Tahira up when I did my TEDx talk. I brought her up as an example, saying there's so many people who use art. There's so many people who use their voices in a different way, just to keep remembering the people who were lost. So I think we can come up with something. We just have to think outside the box and see what can we do. But right before I let you go, and before the phone dies and we lose you abruptly, I'm just going to ask you two more questions. The first question is, there's a lot of women out there who might be demotivated based on either social or cultural stigma. There's a lot of women who are stuck in very uncomfortable positions right now, especially with the physical distancing and isolation and curfew, who might be in very domestic abusive relationships. If there was any advice that you could give to any of them, so this live stream will be up for the next 24 hours. There'll be other people watching as well. If there's it may not even be like physical abuse. It could be emotional abuse even. What would your advice be to them?
I think to reach out to other people. There are also, I know, I don't have the numbers on me now, but I know Win had published some numbers in case of any kind of violence, and I think that included obviously abuse that was emotional or physical, because there's a surge in domestic violence, which has, I think, been discussed on a lot of platforms at the moment. It's a very scary statistic. So I mean, you can reach out to organizations like that, or you can reach out. I know Shanuki and that group, they are kind of frontliners also. You can call them, reach out to them. And if someone comes to you and says, listen, I can't deal with this is happening at home, make sure that I think sometimes we want to resolve their problems on our own. We think that we have the capacity to do that, but sometimes we don't. So to channel them to the right places.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that answer. And I think just to add on to that, over the time of asking, I selectively ask these questions on guests who I think could answer it to give us some insight. And over the time that I've learned is pack a bag, keep it aside, keep it hidden away. If you have a child as well, pack some clothes for them and keep it away. And be in a situation where there's women in need that have numbers as well, that if you need to contact anyone. But if you're really, really in a situation that you can't get out, because women in need will give you curfew passes, they will try and find a place for you to stay, they'll try and get you out of the house if you reach out. But if you're in a position that you really, really can't get out, and if you're stuck in a very bad position, take evidence. Take evidence so that you can use it in a court of law. You have that recorded so you can use it one day to get out of the situation you're in. Because if you're a woman or a man, doesn't matter. If you're being abused mentally, emotionally, and physically, you deserve to get out of that. Because my mom's gone through domestic abuse, and because she made the decision to get out of that when I was at an early age, I have the life that I have now. So trust me, it's actually better apart than together. So speaking from somewhat experience, but I just want to put that out there as well. But Vrai, last question before I let you go, because I'm really being mindful of your time, but also
No,
your
I'm
phone
okay.
dying out.
I'm fine. Yeah, I was worried that my phone. I charged it before, but there was a long Zoom call of 1.5 hours, so I think that killed it.
Oh, shoot. Okay. But I just want to ask you, obviously, this show is called Going Live for Kindness. Kindness is something that my mom has instilled in me from a young age. So I want to know what kindness means to you in your life.
I think for me right now, it means being empathetic. Um, and I think social media is sometimes a very judgmental space. I've been there myself. I've been both a receiver of that judgment and a giver of that judgment. We are all the same. But I think now more than ever in this particular time with COVID, and I think there's a lot of conversation. This is something that I actually shared on another panel recently with Sharanya and Shanuki. The idea of being empathetic, because, and I'd like to share this example with you, but I remember that on the day of the curfew, this is something that really upset me, because here we are working with daily wage workers, trying to get across goods and things to them, and I can see their struggle. We can see their struggle, and their struggles are truly horrific. We have 60% of people in Colombo who are in the informal sector. Most of them haven't had work for 3 weeks. Some of them send their kids to school, and the kids only manage to eat, or they manage to only, the children only manage their meals because they are eating in schools, because there's a portion available. So there's a nutrition meal given to them. Otherwise, they don't even have money to feed their kids. So in that context, to think of how fragile we are because of our poverty. And then to talk about, so we had that day of curfew where we were allowed out for a short amount of time, and there were people in Peta and the bigger markets in and out of Colombo really coming together and standing in line. And the judgment, not in line, because here the Kiehl's lines or the Food City lines or the supermarket lines are proper, right? A meter apart, and people like all geared up with their umbrellas and complaining about having to stand in line for 8 hours, which is legit. It's a problem, right? There's no taking away from that. But also calling people who had to stand in those lines in the polo or kind of crowding up, calling them stupid, calling them senseless. And I think, those are nice words. It was more like "Gong Harakek Burwik," and like in Sinhala especially. And we have to understand that these people, especially if you were shopping in those kinds of markets, they'd have to stand in one line for eggs, one line for flour, one line for rice, one line for vegetables. It's not like going into a supermarket, right? And then here you have a timeline where you have to make sure that you also have to take a bus back home. So the level of judgment that we had at that point in time lacked empathy, right? It lacked us understanding the fears and the apprehensions and the absolute madness that was in the minds of those people who were struggling. And I think we don't get that. We don't get it. And another thing that we don't seem to understand is, I think even amongst our own friends, there are people who are struggling who are afraid to say it. Because they're middle class families, they don't want to have to talk about their problems. And they don't feel like they have the right to talk about their problems because at least they have food on their table. But middle class, we're the ones with the biggest loans and the leases, and we're the ones who are going to be struggling. Now, with over a month, a lot of people being laid off, pay cuts. So if we're going to go into everything just being angry and just calling people stupid and senseless, then we're really going to fall apart, all of us. So we have to be empathetic. So kindness for me means being empathetic. And I think that the more we cultivate that empathy, the more peace we make with the world, and the better we can be to the world.
Absolutely. And I think I practice empathy as much as I can, but I do I fall short sometimes. Like when I saw those pictures of those markets being crowded up, I thought, oh my God, why are these people being like this? But then I took a step back and I was just like, but wait, we're not traveling 2 hours in a bus to get food, right?
Yeah.
We're not standing in 6 lines, right? We're privileged in a way because we can go to a supermarket and we can afford that, right?
And we can
And
use
I
our
was
debit
like,
card,
wait,
we can use our credit card, we can do all of those.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I took a step back and I was just like, because that's a snap judgment, right? We're used to snap judging super fast instead of like realizing what the situation was. But Vrai, thank you so much for that answer. I think you hit the nail on the head. Before you go, I would just like for you to tell us where people can find you in terms of social media, any future projects, or anywhere that people can donate and help out, and any final thoughts.
So at the moment, we've managed. I'm still here. Don't worry.
Okay.
So I know. So at the moment, we don't have a separate page for anything that we're doing. We've been actually running it off our personal account, our personal Facebook profiles. But there's been collected via the Sarvodaya account, as well as We Build Colombo.
You got stuck just a bit there, Bri. Did we lose her? I think we lost her. If we did, I will message her and get the details. And then, yes, her phone has died. But I will definitely message her and get the details so that I can share it later on. So that you guys know where you can help out, especially because daily wage workers are affected a lot. Bri is amazing. Go check out her Instagram and give her a follow. I'll share everything at the end of the day. But yeah, I think her battery might have died. Oh, she's back. She's alive.
No, I'm still here.
We lost you. Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
You were talking about the Facebook page and then you got cut off.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. It was a connectivity problem.
That's
not a
okay.
battery problem. Okay, so very quickly, before my battery does cut out. So we've been running things via our own pages. So I have a public page, Vrai, Balthazaar. I have both a private and public, but I've been sharing things on both. Also on Instagram, so that I've got the same one that you've kind of linked me up with here. And we share a lot of information. The money for this at the moment is going to Sarvodaya, and then it's being channeled to the project. However, I think going forward, we're going to have to, because this is not something that's going to end in like the next few days or weeks. So we're looking at something longer term and bringing together all our resources to see how we can help ease this out, because we can't fix it, but how we can ease out the problem. So there's a lot of things happening. And in terms of kind of last words, yeah, just a constant call to be conscious about our role in the bigger picture, and to not assume that it doesn't matter what we do, because I'm a huge advocate of being in Sinhala I call it a Sakriya Puravasiya. So I'm lost for clearly my language skills today are a little this thing, but about being an active citizen, that's the word. So being an active citizen and finding ways in which you can also be a part of creating the right kind of narrative, and how can you be better about it. So yeah, so our Facebook pages, in my name at the moment, but you can follow me, message me, and I will try my best to respond as quickly as I can.
Amazing. And I think being a part of the solution is better than being a part of the problem. So thank you so much for being on the show, Vrai. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I just want to say this communication can continue. Please let me know if there's any way I can help out as well. But thank you so much for making time. That's the most important thing for me. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having these conversations with people, and for holding this space for people, because I think that's really important. We're dealing with this we're living in a time where we really don't know how to have these how to have these conversations. So you're creating that space. So thank you as well.
No worries. Right, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day ahead, and I will talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
See ya. So guys, like I said, go support Bri. You can message her on Facebook or hey Shisha, I'm going to have you on the show as well on Thursday, and I'm super excited. But yeah, guys, show us some support. Find out how you can help. I've been sharing multiple links where you can donate. I personally donated as well because I can't physically be there and help out in any capacity. So please help out in any capacity you can. Even 100 rupees can go a long way. But guys, I'm going to take a small break, 25 minutes, and we got 2 more guests for the day. And then Sharon's going to try and get some sleep. So I will see you in 25 minutes with the next guest. See you guys.